Millions tuned in expecting another polite debate. What they got instead was a live ambush, set for one man who walked in like a lion entering a den of hyenas. The moment Mel Gibson's boots hit the studio floor, the temperature dropped 10 degrees, and everyone felt it. He didn't wave, he didn't smile. He stalked across the set like a soldier stepping into enemy territory, eyes sharp and cold, scanning the panel like he was calculating who'd strike first. The applause light blinked, but the claps were hesitant, like the audience sensed they weren't about to witness an interview, but an execution. The View's studio, usually buzzing with daytime energy, now felt like a courtroom before the verdict. Tension buzzed under the glossy surface, a crowd waiting for blood, hosts hiding daggers behind polite grins, and a man with a past they were all too eager to weaponize. Whoopi Goldberg sat center stage, her arms folded with the calm of someone who thinks they've already won. On her left, Joy Behar adjusted her cue cards like she couldn't wait to dig into them. Sunny Hostin didn't even try to hide the ice in her expression. This wasn't a panel. It was a firing squad. And Mel knew it. He didn't just look unbothered. He looked amused. As he settled into his chair, he gave a slow, measured nod to the audience, like a gladiator saluting the crowd before the first blow. His expression said it all. Bring it. Goldberg leaned forward, her voice dipped in sugar but laced with venom. Mel, thank you for joining us. Hollywood legend, Oscar winner. And these days, one of the most polarizing figures in America. Let's talk about that. The audience chuckled nervously. Gibson's jaw barely moved. No witty retort. No defensiveness. Just a look in his eyes. That said, you've underestimated the wrong man. He knew what this was. They weren't here to understand him. They were here to erase him. But what they didn't expect. Mel Gibson didn't come to survive the show. He came to hijack it. They didn't expect him to fight back. But with one sentence, Mel Gibson turned the ambush into a battlefield and silenced the studio. The lights shimmered off the table as Whoopi Goldberg leaned in with the kind of smile that meant war. She didn't waste time. This wasn't small talk. This wasn't about movies or legacy. This was about blood. Mel, she purred, you're one of the few celebrities openly backing Trump's proposed tariff plan. 100% tax on foreign films. Hollywood runs on global collaboration. So how exactly does shutting doors help anyone? The room froze. That was the shot. Carefully calculated. Delivered with a velvet glove and iron fist. It wasn't just a policy question. It was a setup. She was painting him as a nationalist, a dinosaur, a traitor to his own industry. And she expected him to either retreat or explode. But Mel didn't blink. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even sit forward. He just gave her a long, piercing look. And then he spoke. Slow, deliberate, like every word was a bullet. It's not about walls, Whoopi. It's about floors, he said, letting the word hang in the air like smoke. Right now, American crews, electricians, set builders, costume designers are working paycheck to paycheck while studios chase cheap labor in countries that don't pay fair wages. You think this is about blocking art? I think it's about protecting the hands that make it. The crowd gasped. A murmur of approval rolled through the studio. In the back, someone even shouted, "That's right!" The panel shifted in their seats. This wasn't going according to script, but Gibson wasn't finished. He turned his gaze from Whoopi to the audience. I've seen men in their 50s lose everything, pensions, homes, because some exec found a tax break in another hemisphere. We sell globalism as progress. But for the working class, it's exile. Silence. Raw, stunned silence. Joy Behar tried to step in with a jab about international unity, but Gibson cut her off with a single raised finger. Not rude, just final. This isn't about flags. It's about dignity, he said. And maybe if more people in Hollywood remembered that, we wouldn't have to have this conversation. It was the moment the panel realized something terrifying. He hadn't come to defend himself. He'd come to expose them. Mel's words had shaken the room, but Whoopi Goldberg wasn't someone who backed down. The smile on her face faded, slowly, deliberately, like a mask being peeled off. What remained was the seasoned warrior of daytime television, someone who'd sparred with senators, moguls, and presidents alike. But her eyes told in a different story. They were calculating, sharp, and suddenly very, very cold. "You talk a good game, Mel," she said, her voice now stripped of charm. "But where was all this love for the working class when you were making headlines? For the wrong reasons." The air went dead. There it was, the personal strike, the kind that doesn't ask a question. It throws a grenade, Joy Behar and Sonny. Host and both stiffened. Even the audience shifted, sensing something darker unfolding. This wasn't just policy anymore. This was character assassination disguised as concern, and it was about to get ugly. Mel exhaled slowly. No anger, no panic, just pain. The kind that settles in your chest after years of being reduced to a headline. "You're right," he said, voice low. "I've made mistakes, big ones. Some I'll regret till the day I die." Whoopi raised an eyebrow, ready to pounce. "But let me ask you something, Whoopi. If a man spends years trying to make things right, privately without cameras, does that mean he doesn't deserve a seat at this table? Or are we only allowed to grow if it fits the script?" The silence was brutal. Even the crew members paused mid-movement. Cameras still rolled, but it felt like time had stopped. Whoopi opened her mouth, but nothing came out. And then Mel leaned forward, slow and steady, like a man who knew exactly where he was leading the room. "You said I speak for the working class, like it's a punchline. But I've seen more truth on a set built by union labor than I've ever seen sitting in these chairs. Maybe the problem isn't what I've done. Maybe the problem is that I'm not afraid to talk about what you haven't." A low, stunned murmur rolled through the crowd. Mel hadn't just deflected. He'd turned the blade around. And suddenly everyone was wondering, was he the villain? Or was he just the only one being honest? The atmosphere in the studio had shifted, from heated to combustible. Even the lights seemed hotter, harsher, like they too were waiting for someone to flinch. Whoopi Goldberg, seasoned and smart, had tried to pivot, but Mel wasn't just a guest anymore. He had become something else, an insurgent force against the safe, polished image of daytime TV. And then, it happened. With a nod so subtle it was almost imperceptible, Mel signaled toward his team in the wings. A technician clicked a button, and the giant screen behind the hosts flickered to life. "What's this?" Joy asked, turning to look, but her voice cracked slightly, betraying a sliver of fear. The screen lit up with a headline: "How the View Silences Opposing Voices," a compilation, clip after clip played. Unedited, raw. In one, a conservative guest tried to answer a question, cut off mid-sentence by Behar's mocking laughter. In another, Whoopi rolled her eyes so dramatically at a veteran's economic concerns. The audience had audibly gasped. And then, Sonny Hostin laughing as she dismissed a working-class caller's concern as out of touch with reality. Each video hit harder than the last. The audience was frozen. The hosts, paralyzed. Finally, the last clip played. The camera zoomed in on Whoopi's face during a 2020 episode, saying flatly, "Free speech doesn't mean we have to entertain nonsense." Silence. Mel turned, slowly, deliberately, and looked right at Whoopi. "That's your idea of open dialogue? You brought me here for a public execution, but forgot I've spent my whole life surviving fire." Whoopi's lips parted to respond, but no sound came out. Mel wasn't finished. "You don't have to like me. Hell, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But don't pretend you're defending truth when all you've done is build a stage, where only your version of it gets to speak." The room erupted. People stood, applauded. Some booed, but no one was silent. Even the cameramen didn't move. They just let it roll. History was unfolding, and everyone in that room knew. And in that moment, the view wasn't the view anymore. It was a courtroom. And Mel had just delivered the closing argument. By the time the segment cut to commercial, the studio was in chaos behind the scenes. Producers were yelling into headsets. Assistants scrambled around like ants disturbed by a boot. But none of it mattered, because outside those four walls, the world had already seen it. Within minutes, clips from the confrontation exploded across social media. Mel Gibson destroyed. The View, Whoopi silenced. Free speech or fake debate all trending within 30 minutes. On TikTok, teens who had never watched The View were stitching Mel's line. If we're only defined by our worst moments, then none of us get to grow. On YouTube, conservative commentators declared it the most iconic on-air reckoning since Bill O'Reilly's meltdown. Progressive voices were split. Some condemned Gibson, but others admitted. The footage didn't lie. Memes flooded X, Twitter. A screen grab of Whoopi's stunned face with the caption, "When the ambush backfires." Another showed Mel with sunglasses photoshopped on, above the phrase, "Sent for an interview." Stayed for the revolution. Even Reddit was ablaze. In the R Politics mega thread, a pinned comment read, "Say what you want about Mel Gibson, but that segment exposed something ugly, and I can't unsee it." And just as the firestorm seemed to be reaching peak heat, Mel Gibson took it further. He released the full behind-the-scenes footage from his team's private cameras, unedited, showing producers prepping Whoopi to steer the conversation toward controversy. The clip of a producer whispering, "Make him crack," before the taping. That one went viral in under 5 minutes. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about Mel's past. It wasn't about tariffs. It wasn't even about the interview anymore. It was about media control, narratives, gatekeeping, and whether The View had just become the exact thing it claimed to fight against. Major outlets scrambled to respond. CNN called it an unfortunate editing mistake. ABC issued a bland, damage-controlled statement. "We value respectful discourse. This moment does not reflect our standards." Too late. The audience had already made up its mind. For the first time in years, The View's ratings plummeted. Advertisers began quietly pulling segments. Behind closed doors, execs whispered the unthinkable. What if he was right? Mel had come in as the accused. He walked out as the accuser. After Mel Gibson's explosive meltdown on The View, everyone expected the media circus to move on. Burn him today, forget him tomorrow. But this time, the fire didn't die down. It spread, igniting alarm bells deep within Hollywood's shadowy corridors. In a sleek, glass-walled office overlooking downtown Los Angeles, a group of high-powered studio executives gathered in urgent crisis mode. The air was thick with tension and anxiety. Every word weighed like a loaded gun. "Gibson's lost it," whispered one, nervously tapping his pen against the mahogany table. "But this isn't just another meltdown. People are actually listening. He's galvanizing the public." Another, colder and more ruthless, shot back. "If we don't contain this, it's not just a ratings problem. It's a full-scale rebellion against everything we've built." Behind the polished corporate facade, whispered strategies flew across the room. Talk of damage control, media blacklists, and quietly influencing coverage like generals plotting a covert war. Mel's words had pierced the carefully constructed veneer of Hollywood glamour and exposed the rotten machinery beneath. Outside the boardroom, whispers and rumors spread like wildfire. Influential agents, producers, and actors were forced to take sides. Some quietly supported Mel's truth-telling, tired of the industry's hypocrisy and the endless compromises. Others doubled down on silencing him, fearing what his rise meant for their status and power. Backstage politics shifted rapidly. Alliances formed and crumbled overnight. Meanwhile, Mel Gibson didn't back down. He seized the momentum with a fierce hunger. More interviews, podcasts, rallies, and fiery speeches. He spoke directly to the people, bypassing the old Hollywood gatekeepers. Every attempt to silence him only amplified his voice, turning him into a symbol of defiance and raw honesty. His message resonated beyond Hollywood, reaching blue-collar workers, artists, and activists alike, fueling a broader conversation about fairness, justice, and who really controls the narrative. The backlash was brutal. Tabloids ran vicious headlines questioning his character and motives. Award committees whispered about excluding him from upcoming ceremonies. Powerful studio heads muttered threats under their breath. Smear campaigns quietly began to circulate, but Mel was battle-tested. He had weathered storms of controversy for decades and wasn't about to be intimidated now. Behind the scenes, a new war brewed, one that could topple old alliances and reshape Hollywood's future. Would the entrenched powers crush this uprising, or was the industry on the cusp of a seismic transformation no one could stop? The stakes had never been higher, and everyone knew the next moves would be decisive. The Hollywood elite were rattled, but Mel Gibson was unstoppable. His relentless campaign against the industry's hypocrisy had morphed into a cultural movement. More and more people were tuning in, not just movie fans, but ordinary Americans fed up with the status quo. Gibson's message was echoing through social media feeds, dinner tables, and even late-night conversations. It wasn't just about Hollywood anymore. It was about justice, fairness, and giving a voice to the unheard. In every interview, Mel's words carried the weight of raw truth, his passion undeniable. He wasn't just a disgraced actor fighting for a comeback. He had become a symbol of resistance against a broken system. His voice, once dismissed as controversial, now rang with undeniable authority. His message was simple but powerful. Art should serve people, not profit. Award shows became battlegrounds. Whispers of boycott turned into open debates. Directors, writers, and actors began questioning long-held alliances with studios that prioritized profit over integrity. The industry's facade of glamour was cracking under the pressure of these demands for change. The public was listening. Social media exploded with a Mel Gibson truth, trending worldwide. Fans organized grassroots campaigns demanding fair wages, transparency in production, and accountability from Hollywood's biggest players. Memes, videos, and heartfelt testimonials flooded the internet, giving the movement an unstoppable momentum. But the real shock came during a live, nationwide televised debate between Mel Gibson and a coalition of top studio executives and The View hosts, including Whoopi Goldberg herself. The tension in the studio was palpable. This wasn't just a debate, it was a reckoning. The debate opened with Whoopi attempting to undermine Mel's credibility, citing his past controversies and painting him as a troublemaker who had no place, lecturing Hollywood. The hosts rallied behind her, launching a coordinated verbal offensive. But Mel, calm and composed, countered with undeniable facts and heartfelt stories of struggling workers and marginalized artists who had been pushed aside by the system. His voice never wavered. His eyes burned with fierce determination. Every word cut deeper than the last. The moment that broke the internet came when Mel confronted Whoopi directly. "You say I'm controversial, but you've built your platform on silencing voices that challenge you. The real controversy is the silence behind your smiles. The power to speak truth shouldn't be a weapon. It should be a right." The studio audience gasped. Cameras zoomed in on Whoopi's stunned face. For the first time in decades, the formidable talk show icon was rendered speechless. Then Mel took it even further, pulling up clips of The View, cutting off conservative voices, mocking dissenting opinions, and manipulating narratives to fit their agenda. The studio fell into shocked silence as the screen showed undeniable proof of bias and censorship. Social media erupted instantly. Hashtags like Mel Gibson destroyed The View and truth over silence trended worldwide. News outlets debated the fallout. For days, Hollywood insiders scrambled to respond. Advertisers pulled their support. Studios hastily announced new policies promising transparency and fairness, yet many wondered if it was too little, too late. Backstage, the tension was thick. Whoopi Goldberg, visibly shaken, avoided reporters' questions. Mel Gibson, meanwhile, gave a rare interview, his voice calm but resolute. "This isn't about me. It's about every worker, every artist who's been silenced or ignored. Change is overdue. If we want it, we have to be brave enough to demand it." The final moments of the debate saw standing ovations from many in the audience, and even some of Mel's fiercest critics were forced to acknowledge the raw power of his message. As the cameras cut, Mel stood tall, no longer the Hollywood outcast, but a leader of a movement demanding real change. He had turned controversy into courage, criticism into conversation, and silence into a roar that could no longer be ignored. But the story wasn't over. The battle for Hollywood's soul had just begun, and Mel Gibson was ready to lead the charge.